Welcome into Vandy 24/7 Live. I'm your host, Billy Derrick, here on the 440 Sports Network. Shout out to our basketball sponsor, the Wash House. You can log on to washhouseclean.com for more information. They're a presenting sponsor for basketball season. It's going to be all basketball today. We're going to be joined by Kevin Ingram, the play-by-play voice for Vanderbilt basketball throughout the entire season. We'll get to him to preview tonight's matchup, talk about this team as a whole, what they've done so far, and then we'll wrap it up with Joey Dwyer for an analysis, full analysis on tonight's game. Quick shout out to our other sponsors, the Murfreesboro Pure Milk Company, Sutherland and Belk, John Levin and his company Wobble Bond Dickinson, and Yeaman Packaging Systems. Our guest line is brought to you by John Levin, good friend of the show, Wobble Bond Dickinson. Thanks to student athletes at Vanderbilt University for their dedication, effort, and hard work. Again, Vanderbilt, Mississippi State tonight at 8 o'clock. You can watch it on ESPNU. Mississippi State is a 2.5-point favorite. So we'll dive fully into that matchup. We're going to kick it off with a visit from Kevin Ingram. Kev, how you doing?
I'm good. What's going on, Billy?
Not much. Just looking forward to this game. And I want to start with what you've seen from this team so far. And obviously you've, with your experience at Belmont, calling basketball, you know what good basketball looks like when you see it. How would you assess what Coach Byington has done with this program so far, whether it's before the season, compiling a roster? He talked in depth about that, how tough that was, but also throughout this season so far, how would you assess what Coach B has done?
Yeah, you're right. I feel like I know what good basketball looks like, and I feel like this has been good basketball. It's been a lot of fun, and had a great time getting to know Coach Byington and his staff. They've really done a terrific job of taking a bunch of guys who had not played together, with the exception of a couple, and put them together to make a cohesive team. It's worked out great. They've put points on the board, scored pretty much 80 every game, averaging in the mid 80s, and a scoring margin of almost 20 plus 20 per game. The win at LSU was really impressive. I felt like that was really a huge win. I mean, it just felt like a big game to start off conference play because wins are going to be at a premium in this league. And you feel like, if you can stack up a couple, it really takes some pressure off of you. And this team has a chance to do some really big things after a great run through the non-conference at 12-1. You set yourself up really for success if you can have a good season in the SEC. But it's been fun, and it's been neat to see a group of mostly veteran players, but a couple of young guys too. I mean, Jalen Carey's only a sophomore. Tyler Tanner, the freshman, has been terrific. So yeah, this whole group has come together really nicely, and you just play a fun style. And I would encourage fans, if you haven't been out to see this team play at Memorial Gym, get out there and check them out. You're going to like what you see.
I'm glad you mentioned the experienced players, and that's a common theme with this team. I think the oldest team in the SEC. I was talking about that with somebody the other day, or at least one of them. And we talk about all the time, Kevin, in March. You got older guards, obviously post players help, but you look at AJ Hoggard, who's played a lot of basketball coming from Michigan State in that program. Jason Edwards, who's played a ton of basketball, just built his way up from the JUCO ranks. Those guards, whether it's Nickel, Collins, even Magnon, is that how you pronounce it? Magnon?
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Yeah, Mike Eds are only spelled different.
How funny is that, by the way?
Yeah, I know. That's really strange, isn't it?
But those guards and the experience with those guards, it's not like, Tyler, other than Tyler Tanner, but he doesn't look like a freshman out there. Talk to me about those guards to start, and then we'll get to the post players and how, it's not like you've got the same player in 4 or 5 different guys. All those guards can do several different things.
Yeah, and I think that's a great point, Billy. And I've always said that when you have a successful basketball team, you usually have guys who are different types of players. You don't have too many of the same player. That can be good, and that can also be bad. But for this group, yeah, you do have a very diverse set of skills for these different players. Obviously, one thing they have in common is they can bring the ball up the floor and they can shoot threes. That pretty much holds true for everybody on this roster that you'll see playing. But AJ Hoggard, you talk about veteran players and a veteran presence. You saw that in that game against LSU when Vanderbilt felt like he was teetering a little bit and maybe on the ropes. LSU had come back. Vanderbilt had led by double figures in the first half, but LSU came back to tie it and took a 1-point lead. It was 56-55. All of a sudden, AJ Hoggard just basically takes over the game. hit a couple big threes, one after his own missed free throw, and Devin McLaughlin got the rebound and kicked it back out. A couple of 3-point plays. He was so good. He scored, I think it was 11 or 12 of his 17, I guess it was, in about a 4.5-minute stretch that decided the game. He was just gigantic. Both ends of the court. He's so good. Great court vision, super passer. I think he's one of those guys that lives to play in these types of games. I mean, spent 4 years at Michigan State playing in that high level of competition in the Big Ten and so many big games. So he told me before the season he was really looking forward to seeing how he stacked up playing in the Southeastern Conference. And boy, one game in, it couldn't have gone a whole lot better for A.J. Hoggard. He's been terrific. But yeah, we just got all these different types of players and guys who just played a lot of basketball. And gosh, Jason Edwards, you have to appreciate his climb and his grind through his career to get to this point. And he's fun to watch too. And I mean, guys just can be at times a scoring machine. And even though he was banged up at LSU, took that knee to the thigh in the first half, he came out there and poured in 7 free throws and really put the game on ice for Vanderbilt at the end. So yeah, all these guards are fun to watch and play in different ways and find different ways to score. I think MJ Collins has gone a little bit under the radar for his outstanding work. He was excellent in that game at LSU the other day. And yeah, you can go up and down. Lots of good performances in that conference opener, and so much of it was on the shoulders of these experienced guards.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned Hoggard, and it's not like Hoggard put the team on his back. I don't know that Vanderbilt wins that game without Jalen Carey and Collins, like you mentioned, and even what Edwards was able to do, to get up into double figures, and Tyler Nickel. It's never just one guy with this team, but Hoggard, he taught me a lot in that LSU game. You're just taking over the game, and that's a trait that you got to have, especially if you're going to make any noise in the SEC. And also in March, Kevin, did you learn certain things about A.J. Hoggard that maybe you and Tim might not have seen yet from him, especially late in the crunch time?
I mean, I think you just maybe reinforced what you knew about him, is that he's as we talked about, a very experienced player, has been through all this before and not afraid of the moment, not afraid to take a big shot and make a big shot. Yeah, he's just a steady presence. And again, I think we'll see his play continue to ramp up as we move through the SEC. But I mean, yeah, there's so many big performances. I mean, Tyler Nickel has shot the ball great the last few games. Got off to a little bit of a slow start this season, but I mean, you look up and he's shooting 37% from 3. He is just a knockdown shooter. If you go out to practice or shoot arounds and watch him, I mean, he can pour him in one after another. But just had so many good performances in that game. Chris Magnon was limited a bit by fouls. He did hit one free throw to get him to 1,000 for his career, combining what he did at Cornell and so far here at Vanderbilt. So yeah, those performances were fun, but you're going to need a whole bunch more of them. We got 17 more of these to play in conference play. You're going to need everybody to contribute in some way every single game if you're going to have a chance to be successful in this league.
And it starts tonight against Mississippi State. Obviously, Josh Hubbard is a stud for them. They bring in Riley Kugel from Florida, who's another really solid player. I've got a couple of really good post players as well. What does Vanderbilt have to key on tonight, Kevin? What are the keys to victory in your mind for Vanderbilt to get a win, in a win that would be massive heading into a tough road game at Missouri?
Yeah, this would be a really big game. And, the LSU game on the road was big to start, but this is your home opener, and you want to keep that momentum going from that big win on Saturday in Baton Rouge. This will be a tough game. Mississippi State, one thing you know about them is they're always really physical. I mean, that's just feels like the trademark of their program, regardless of who's been coached. Chris Jans has done a great job there. He got him to the tournament a couple times. But they're another team. They have some veteran guys. They have some young guys, but they have some guys that they've added who've played in other places. You mentioned Riley Kugel. He was really good at Florida. I know things didn't work out especially well for him in the end there, but has found himself a nice spot playing for Mississippi State. But yeah, Josh Hubbard and Cameron Matthews, gosh, it feels like he's been around there forever. I think he's played in more games than anybody in Mississippi State history. But yeah, they always have those dudes. I kept looking in the season stats and the box scores. I can't find Tolu Smith anywhere. I feel like he should still be there.
That feels wrong.
I felt like he played forever for Mississippi State. Yeah, it's weird. It will be weird to not see him, but it's you add transfers. R.J. Melendez, saw him at Georgia. Claudio Harris had played at Boston College. He was a teammate at Devin McLaughlin. So, yeah, you've got some really good parts for this Mississippi State team and some core guys who have been there for a while, too.
Kevin, you covered SEC basketball. I don't think there's been a season quite like this ever. I mean, I'm 25 years old. Maybe there's some older folks that go back to the Barkley days and the days where post players dominated the league. But have you ever seen it like this?
Yeah, I guess I'm one of those older folks who goes back to the Barkley days because I remember it well when he played for Auburn. He was the round mound of rebound back then. They had some great teams when Sonny Smith was coach. It really is crazy to look at this league from top to bottom and see how well everybody has performed so far. I mean, even some of the first day results to me are a little bit surprising. I was surprised that Mississippi State beat South Carolina like they did, and that game was over early. It was a quick knockout. Vanderbilt had the only road win in the 8 conference games that happened last Saturday. And some of the games weren't especially close, maybe not as close as I might have expected. That Kentucky-Florida game was that was a terrific and entertaining basketball game to watch. Now you'll see how those teams do as Florida goes home to play Tennessee tonight and Kentucky's on the road to play Georgia. It's going to be an absolute grind. I mean, it's crazy to me to think about what type of record might win the league this year. Will 5 losses get it done? If you can go 13-5, will that be enough to win the league? And I've seen the league where it had maybe better teams at the top, but never one through the bottom where you had this level of teams and competition. And those things will shake out as we go over the next few weeks here with the regular season conference play. But it really is. It is tough. And it's a credit to these teams and these programs, these universities that have accepted the challenge that the league put out there to be better at basketball. And they've done that. They've upped the star power of coaches. You've had certainly an influx of good players to the conference. It's going to be fun. I'm really looking forward to seeing how Vanderbilt plays against we certainly make it through this 18-game grind, but how are you going to perform when you play against these teams that are ranked in the top 10 and are unbeaten or close to it? I know there's only one unbeaten left, but it's really going to be fun, and hopefully you can just find a way to grind out enough wins to get the job done. One
more thing on Vanderbilt here, Kevin, if there's one thing you're still looking to learn or figure out about this team, because for me, Joey and I talked about it, what is their true resiliency like in a road SEC game? Because the only true road game they had played up until that LSU game was at Virginia Tech, as Coach Byington pointed out, which I didn't even realize. I was like, wow. And for them to win that game was impressive. What's one thing in your mind that you're still looking to learn to realize about this team and for them to maybe take that next step?
I've been asked that a couple times. One of the things I had said was consistent 3-point shooting, but it feels like that started to be an improvement and an improved part of the team and level itself off too. It felt like the team got off to a little bit of a slow start as a group from 3-point land, but then you look at the numbers over the last few games, they've been just fine. The 3-point shooting is such a key part of what Vanderbilt does, and didn't shoot it especially well in the first half against LSU. Made some big ones in the second half, 6 of 12 from 3 after making only a couple in the first half of that game in Baton Rouge on Saturday. So if you ask me one thing, this has kind of been my consistent answer to that, is I think just steady and consistent 3-point shooting. I mean, you're not going to make 15 of them every game playing in the SEC, but man, if you can make 10 or 12 and shoot a decent percentage, it's going to go a long way in helping you win these games.
Last thing, I know there are nights where the games are going to be on 102.5, the game, and nights where the games will be on 94.9, the Fan. And I know sometimes fans get confused by that, but Kevin, give them an idea of this, when it'll be on 102.5 and when it'll be on 94.9, so that fans don't get confused.
All right. Well, it's really pretty simple. If you have an access to a Nashville Predators schedule, you can that will help you. It's basically 102.5 that the Predators are their main team on their station. So when the Predators are playing and Vanderbilt is playing at the same time, the game will automatically be on 94.9. If the Predators are not playing, we'll be on 102.5. So that's basically what it comes down to. And Chase McCabe and the folks over at the game have been great to try to make it as easy as possible and make a, be as accommodating, he said, as possible for our Vanderbilt broadcast. But yeah, if there's a conflict with the Predators, our game will be on 94.9. Otherwise, we'll be on 102.5. Tonight's game will be on 94.9 because the Preds are playing, I think they play at Winnipeg tonight. And I was texting with Willie Donick. He was listening to the game on Saturday when we were at LSU. He's like, yeah, we're in Calgary where it's 6 degrees below zero. And next we're going to Winnipeg where it's also about 6 degrees below zero. So hopefully everybody's bundled up. We get a Vanderbilt win and get a Preds win and get everybody back home.
Yeah, it's 29 here in Nashville. Feels like 22 right now. So
that's not like -6 though. That's not quite as bad as I can't imagine making it through a winter up there. I'm very much a Southern guy. I do not like wintertime at all, other than basketball. And so, I struggled even through a minimal amount of cold weather and snow is not the best for me.
I know. I say I love the winter months, and I prefer cold over the warmth. But nope. I get to now, and I'm like, I don't know about that.
When it's 90 degrees in the summertime, you never hear me complain because I think about days like today, and I think about you know snow coming on Friday and all that stuff. It's like, you don't have to shovel snow in the summertime when it's 90 degrees.
But seriously, be careful if you're going to the game tonight. I know it's a late tip off, but hopefully it's going to be a fun crowd. And really, Kevin, the first meaningful game in a little bit for Vanderbilt basketball at Memorial Gym. So really looking forward to that, and looking forward to checking out you and Tim on the call there on 94.9 The Fan. Kevin, good luck on the call tonight, and thanks for taking the time.
Yeah, anytime, Billy. We'll be on the air 7:30 tonight, tip-off 8:05 Central Time. And, yeah, man, we'd love to see a good crowd at Memorial. Come out and support these guys. You'll be entertained. I can guarantee you that. And, man, hopefully another big win and get to 2-0 in SEC play.
See you, Kev.
All right, see you, Billy.
All right, that's Kevin Ingram, the play-by-play voice. Vanderbilt men's basketball does a great job there on 102.5 The Game. Also 94.9 The Fan there with Tim Thompson. Coming up, we're going to visit with Joey Dwyer, and Joey is actually currently getting out of class. So we're going to have to stall a little bit here. If you're watching live, you got comments and questions, feel free to fire any away. We did have a comment here from Willie on YouTube, I think, talking about AJ Hogard and how big he came up there against LSU. And, tonight's game is interesting because, Mississippi State is the 14th ranked team of the country. Vanderbilt and Mississippi State both won their SEC openers. Vanderbilt's looking for their first 2-0 start since the 2016 season. So, I say first meaningful game. It really is. Like, and even going back to Stackhouse a couple of years ago, I don't think there were some big SEC home games in the Stackhouse era, but with Byington at the helm, with the players you have on this roster, the experience and what they've done so far to get to 13-1, which is the best start since 2007, I think I saw. This is huge. And I think the feeling around this program than anything else, there wasn't, if you go back the last 5 years, there was not a ton of hope of making the NCAA tournament. Now, I know we go back a couple of years ago, and, we would all argue that Vanderbilt should have made the tournament that year. It didn't happen, but the killer for them, obviously, that year was losing those non-conference games. But you get into this season, they haven't lost to anybody they should have beaten. That's number one. Number two, you're top 30 in the net, whereas you started – the net in the 50s and 60s. So before the season even started. So I think, Byington, he's doing everything that it takes to get Vanderbilt to the tournament. It's not going to be easy. They've got an absolute gauntlet coming up here in SEC play, but they're receiving votes in the AP poll. If you beat Mississippi State tonight, and again, Mississippi State is now a 2.5 point favorite. Vanderbilt opened as a 1.5 point favorite. Mississippi State now a 2.5 point favorite tonight. If you beat Mississippi State tonight, and then you go beat Missouri on the road, and again, that's no easy task. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but if you do that, you'll be ranked in the AP poll come next Monday. They are receiving votes in the coaches poll as well. Again, it's on ESPNU tonight with Kevin Fitzgerald and Pat Bradley, the shooter, on the call there on ESPNU. That LSU win, Getting that, I think, says a lot about the makeup of this team. And Joey and I talked about it in the post game. For them to be able to claw back in that game, well, maybe not even necessarily claw back, but find the resiliency to get that win. I thought really said a lot about this team. They out rebounded LSU 37-27, 17-5 on the offensive glass. So Vanderbilt on the offensive glass. And who would have thought this season that Vanderbilt would have been a dominant team on the offensive glass? I think you look at McLaughlin and Carey and even Chris Magnon. Those guys are active on the glass. They're athletic. They'll jump you out the gym. And McLaughlin with I look at his arms and his hands. I mean, just monstrous. So I think McLaughlin is such a key for this team. We talked about AJ Hogard coming through in the clutch. Same with Jalen Carey. He put together his best performance in a Vanderbilt uniform with 14 points and 8 rebounds. Had a couple of assists, a couple of steals, and a block. These guys are versatile. It's not like it. And I'm glad Kevin mentioned that on the really good teams, you've got guys that can do different things. Nickel is your spot up shooter, and he can slash and score occasionally, but that's your spot up shooter right there. And obviously Edwards can be a spot up shooter as well, but he's a guy that can score off the bounce. Not starting right now, but it's not an indictment on him by any means. But this team has everything you need. Now, again, you could argue without Kajani Wright, you don't have a dominant post presence. But Carey proved he could hold up his end of the bargain. Now, LSU is not the type of challenge that an Arkansas, a Tennessee, a Kentucky in the post will be, especially Auburn with Janai Broome. But he's not Janai Broome. But you look at the skill set of a Janai Broome. I think Jalen Carey, you could be looking down the road if he's able to start hitting some threes, if he continues to rebound, and when he sets up in that high post and is able to finish in the paint. I don't know that Vanderbilt's ever had a post player that can do the type of things Jalen Carey can do. You had MJ Collins with 14, Edwards had 12, Nickel had 11, and now you head into tonight's game. Number one, the crowd should be there. If you're a Vanderbilt fan and have been starving for good, fun basketball at Memorial Gym, and you may not have seen it in the last 4 or 5 years, well, you've got it now. So there's no reason not to show up at Memorial Gym tonight. Again, 8 o'clock tip-off. I would recommend leaving your house earlier than you think you should because it takes a lot, especially for these big home games, getting into either Kensington parking garage or the 25th Avenue parking garage. So, again, leave earlier than you think you should. Vanderbilt has lost 5 of the last 7 in this series dating back to 2019. They've struggled with Mississippi State in the past. I think that is something I think we can all agree on. But again, we'll preview that with Joey Dwyer here in just a second as he gets set up here. We do have a comment from Doris. I'm liking Magnon. He can jump those passing lanes, and even though he doesn't look like the muscle of the team, he can be pretty intimidating with a hard foul early. And I'm going to get to this with Joey. I think Magnon is, you could argue he's an X factor for this team. When he's active on defense and he's getting steals, and they actually talked about this on the broadcast. LSU, when they were talking to Coach McMahon, they keyed on Magnon in their film study. So it's you look at it, he's not a guy that jumps off the page, jumps off the TV screen at you, but he does a lot of the dirty work that you have to have, especially in a lot of these hard, tough earned SEC games. But again, Vanderbilt, Mississippi State tonight, waiting to get Joey Dwyer in here. We won't have a ton of time with Joey because I'm trying to keep these to 30 to 40 minutes. But we'll get his thoughts on tonight's matchup. Again, Mississippi State is a 2.5 point favorite. And, to me, if Vanderbilt gets this win, you're 2-0 in the SEC. And then you look at that road game against Missouri being a more winnable matchup than an Auburn or a Tennessee or Kentucky. And we're actually going to get Joey Dwyer in here now. Joey, what's going on?
What's up, Billy Derrick? Thank you for having me.
Absolutely. We'll kind of rumble through your thoughts tonight. And I know you've looked into this matchup, had Kevin Ingram on, and, he talked a lot about Josh Hubbard and Riley Kugel, and even the fact that they don't have Tolu Smith anymore. I feel like part of that is wrong, that there's no Tolu Smith on Mississippi State anymore. Initially, what scares you about tonight's matchup on the Vanderbilt side?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot. Keyshawn Murphy is a good big, too. I know the Tolu Smith thing is kind of been beat to death by the national media this season. Is like they have to be a lot different. And that is true. They do have to be a lot different. But Keyshawn Murphy is what Jerry Stackhouse would call a load. He's 6'10". He can put it on the floor. He's probably more physical by a good stretch than any of Vanderbilt's bigs. And that's a story. I think Josh Hubbard is one of the best guards in the league, too. And if Jason Edwards is banged up, it's going to be difficult for him to chase him around. And maybe Jason Edwards doesn't even play. So those are the things that jump off at you. And I will say in the end, it's going to be a guards game, regardless of what Murphy does, regardless of what Carey does. I'm thinking it's going to be decided by, does Josh Hubbard outplay Jason Edwards? Does A.J. Hoggard outplay Riley Kugel? What about Grant Huffman and Claudio Harris? Things along those lines are going to determine this game. I think Mississippi State is really good. I think they're really physical. They really get after you, and they show all the staples of a Chris Jans coach team. But I will say the Tolu Smith thing is real, and they've had to play differently because of it, but don't think that means that they don't have any physicality or anything. All it means is they don't have a guy that they're going to throw it down to 20 times a game. But if they throw it down to Murphy, he's still going to be able to get a bucket. I just don't know that it's as consistent as Tolu Smith. They're really, really good, Billy, though. They're ranked 14th in the country. Their one loss to Butler was probably a loss they shouldn't have had. I think they're a lot better than Butler, but they're also not an unbeatable team. Vanderbilt's going to see some teams that feel pretty close to unbeatable, but I think the spread indicates to you that Mississippi State is not one of those teams.
I'm glad you mentioned Jason Edwards. When I first saw your tweet that he's questionable, I thought it was gamesmanship. You know, I think they really need him tonight, but you might think differently. Does Jason Edwards play tonight?
I can't tell you definitively, but I would guess that the odds are in favor of that. We'll be on Jason Edwards' watch as soon as I get to the gym. I'll be just sitting down there. I think I might skip the pregame meal if he's a game time decision. But, Billy, I don't think it's anything necessarily to worry about a ton in terms of structural damage or anything like that. It looked like he just got popped in the hip pointer or in the thigh, which leads me to believe that it's maybe just a little bit of bruising that may will wear off as he gets more into the flow of the game. I think the bigger thing to worry about rather than maybe him being out is that, you know, maybe he's not full speed, and you can't necessarily afford to be not full speed when Josh Hubbard is running circles around the court and being ran off pin downs. And when you're playing against the Mississippi State team that has a Cam Matthews who's screening really hard, and they're running, again, if Josh Hubbard is the guy you're guarding, he's not just iso balling you, he's going to be running off screens, things along those lines. And I think that's where it's a little bit difficult if you're Jason Edwards, and they've got to get some scoring punch from him today if he plays too. I know that we wrote earlier in the week about how their guys stepped up. Jalen Carey stepped up. MJ Collins stepped up against LSU. I don't think that's a recipe for success. I think Jason Edwards is the guy, and he's got to be a guy at some point. And I don't necessarily expect that he won't be, but I do think he might be a step slow today like he was in the second half against LSU. And as Mark Byington indicated, wasn't necessarily himself in that game. Cameron
on Mississippi State says State turns it over at one of the lowest rates in the country. It'll be interesting to see which team's style can dictate the game more. I think that's interesting. You know, Vanderbilt's formula against LSU, and this could be their formula all season, Joey, that they turn you over and they don't turn it over. But Mississippi State doesn't turn it over either. So I think that's a good point, that which style wins out tonight.
Yeah, that is a good point. There's a lot of good guards in this game, a lot of old guards in this game, and Josh Hubbard's not necessarily an old one, but I think he has a good feel for what they want to do offensively. They have the 16th ranked offense in the country for a reason. They've got a lot of guys who can put it on the floor, a lot of different ways they can hurt you. And I think an underrated part of their offense, like we had mentioned, without Tolu Smith, is their inside presence. I don't think they're necessarily a dump it down in the post and do those type of things team, but I do think they're a team that you can legitimately be hurt by their interior presence, and that's something I think I worry about with Vanderbilt. In terms of their rebounding, they are a top 30 offensive rebounding team in the country too. They almost give me shades of Texas A&M with a really good point guard who's going to be high volume, and then some guards to complement him. Yeah. And then a really good offensive rebounding core. Cam Matthews is one of the best offensive rebounders in the league in my mind, and you've also got a couple bigs who can do it as well. So I think they're a good positional rebounding team more than they are a their 5 is going to grab every rebound and dominate that way. I don't think I'm necessarily super worried about Vanderbilt in terms of the matchup in the front court. I think Carey can maybe hold his own a little bit, but foul trouble is going to be a thing, and positional rebounding is going to be a huge thing as well, Billy.
Vanderbilt opened as 1.5-point favorite. Mississippi State is now a 2.5-point favorite, which I think a lot of us expected. But somebody on the board last night when Vanderbilt was the favorite, and it will act as if Vanderbilt's still the favorite now, even though they're not. Somebody said that Vandy hasn't been favored over a ranked team since 2016 under Kevin Stallings, and that hasn't been confirmed. But what does that say about the potential of this group? That even now, Joey, that it's a one possession spread against the 14th ranked team in the country. I know it's at Memorial. If this is in Starkville, you could see it at 5 or 6. But what does that say about this team? Because this would not have been the case last year. It just wouldn't have.
Yeah, I think it tells you a lot that they're prepared for the moment. And that's the biggest thing to me there. I think the program has taken a big step in that way, to where if you had looked at a team like Mississippi State in the last couple of years, you would have thought that they were not prepared to go and beat a team like that. And Stackhouse teams always played kind of above their weight against a team like this. But I do think that they were not ready to be favored throughout the Stackhouse tenure against a team like this. And now they've kind of stepped into that moment. And I think that's a sign of progress, even if they don't win tonight, is that they are projected to be in this game. They made a ton of progress even since the beginning of the year. This team at the beginning of the year, if they played Mississippi State in early November, this would not have even been a 2 or 3 point spread. It probably would have been closer to 5 or 6, even at Memorial. Kind of shows you the ground they've made up in terms of the resume that they have, and the computers love them. And tonight is an opportunity for Vanderbilt basketball to show why the eye test should love them as well, because we know the computers have really taken a liking to Vanderbilt, but they don't have a signature win yet. They have a couple really nice ones. This would be a signature win for Mark Byington in early SEC play, to let people know that, man, we're here and we're a force to be reckoned with, a team that you should not write off if you're a Tennessee or an Auburn, things along those lines. They can prove tonight that they're a team capable of competing with some of the better teams in the league, and man, would that be a statement early on.
Jerry Palm has Vandy right now as one of his last 4 teams in the tournament, and that would put Vanderbilt, as 11, 12. If you're power rank of the SEC, most people have Vanderbilt between 10 and 12. I would say, I think there's an argument to place them higher at this point in the season. But you've seen 11, you've seen 12, some 10s in terms of power rankings. In your mind, Joey, and I don't know if you have tiers set in the SEC, but where do they stand in the pecking order in the SEC?
I think they're kind of around for me where other people had them. I had them 12th in the preseason poll, and I don't necessarily know that my opinion has changed a ton. Let me pull up the standings just so I don't make sure I don't miss anybody. I think they're definitely better than South Carolina and LSU. I think they are in kind of that tier above those teams. Let me find the standings for sure so I don't screw this up. Bill, you know how hard it is to find SEC standings? It's way harder than it should be. You have to go through like 4 different pages. All right. I think they're probably better than Texas. I think they're kind of on the level of Missouri. It's really interesting though, like Tennessee, Auburn, Mississippi State, Alabama, Kentucky, Texas A&M, Florida. Those are all top 15 teams, and so it's really hard to want to put them anywhere 1 through 8 or 9 or 10. It's almost like a slight to say that they're 12th, but I think in a lot of ways that's a compliment. I think they're probably comparable or better to Oklahoma. I don't think Oklahoma is going to sustain what they've done thus far. Georgia, I think, is a team that's on Vanderbilt's level. I think Georgia has a much better front court and probably is a bad matchup for Vanderbilt, but I don't necessarily think that indicates that they're a significantly better team than Vanderbilt is. I would say that I'm probably still around where I had them in the preseason, which was, again, 11-12. I think the roster is good. I also think the roster has some pretty significant flaws that make there become a pretty big difference between 1 through 8 and Vanderbilt.
To me, tonight you talked about it's going to be one with the guard matchups. If Hubbard just goes off, for 30 points, it's hard to see a path for Vanderbilt to win this game. Now he's going to get his, right? But, you've also got a guy like Riley Kugel that can go off. Maybe not go off, but can play really well. Cam Matthews on the boards. If you let Mississippi State control the pace and tempo of the game, don't think you win tonight if you're Vanderbilt. But if you force them into some bad decisions, and Joey, I think tonight you could see some trapping. You could see maybe more full court pressing, I think, than we've seen. I think Byington knows that the formula for them is turning you over, but Mississippi State doesn't turn it over. So he may get more creative in that plan to turn Mississippi State over, because that Vanderbilt needs easy buckets in transition off of turnovers. That's a lot of what they've done this season, and it's a lot of what they did against LSU. I feel like the first 8 possessions for LSU, they turned the ball over, and Vanderbilt got easy buckets. And so, and those are, those are like automatics for Vanderbilt in a lot of these games. It's not going to be an automatic tonight. So what do you think happens? What's your pick tonight?
Well, I want to touch on that too, because I think that's a great point. Chris and I had talked a lot about that throughout the year. They have thrived so much off of, first of all, transition points and points off turnovers, as well as even at times second chance points.
Yeah.
Those things have kind of carried them into some bigger margins of victory. They've carried them into the win over Cal. I think they had like 28 points off of turnovers or some crazy number. I don't know if that was even in the range, but my point being, a lot of that's going to be eliminated tonight against a ball handler that doesn't turn it over a ton, and a ball handler that's really composed, knows the league, knows how to play. And that's a overused term in basketball, but I think it's applicable to Josh Hubbard. He's a basketball player. He knows how to play, and it's going to be really difficult for Vanderbilt to turn him over. I wonder what it looks like tonight when you probably are only getting 5 to 10 points off of turnovers, and you might not win the offensive rebounding battle or the second chance points battle. Do you still find a way to win? It's going to have to look different for Vanderbilt than it has throughout a lot of the year. Are you be able to make shots from the perimeter? Does Tyler Nickel have a big game? Can A.J. Hogarth assert his dominance again throughout a good stretch of the game? Can Jalen Carey do what he did on Saturday, or even anything comparable to it?
Yeah.
Things along those lines are going to determine this game. Can they guard? I thought they had a really good defensive first half against LSU, and maybe it got a little bit looser in the second half. Mark Byington kind of indicated the same thing, but that's the thing for me, Billy. Do they have enough to kind of win without all of the extracurricular things in terms of opposing teams turning it over and opposing teams not boxing out? Can Vanderbilt be good enough to make Mississippi State beat them and to beat Mississippi State? Because Mississippi State's not going to beat itself, and that's kind of what it comes down to for me. I think it's interesting because I think it's kind of a bad matchup for Vanderbilt. It's not a team that is going to necessarily kill you inside like they would have with Tolu Smith, but I think they're really good in terms of everything that we have questions about with Vanderbilt. Mm-hmm. They're not a great shooting team, and that's something that bodes in Vanderbilt's favor. But when they miss, they get a lot of offensive rebounds, Billy, and that's something that Vanderbilt, I guess, didn't really struggle with last year against Texas A&M that I thought they would. So maybe that's a point of confidence, even though it shouldn't be because it's a completely different team. But maybe if you want to think of it like that, Vanderbilt has conquered that in the past.
Mm-hmm.
I almost think that this would be I certainly think it'd be Vanderbilt's most impressive win of the year, just because it feels like a game that they probably shouldn't win, because it's the blueprint of how to beat Vanderbilt Mississippi State has and consistently does. And for that reason, I would probably guess Mississippi State wins. But, man, if Vanderbilt could win and do it within a more than a buzzer beater way, that would be a huge testament to what they are and that they can win in a multitude of ways. And if you're looking for confidence that they can do it, they've done it in a multitude of ways this year, even at times without the turnovers and second chance points. It's time to see what this team is really made of. This is their biggest test yet. And it's going to be a fun night at Memorial regardless. It'll probably be a solid crowd and finally a good SEC basketball game in Memorial Gym. It's been too long, and it's been too long since one of these has meant something to this program. It has meant something for the resume, meant something for any type of statement. It's been 2 years since that, and it's refreshing to see it again on West End, Billy.
Absolutely. 8:00 tonight at Memorial. Vanderbilt hosting Mississippi State. Bulldogs are 2.5-point favorites. You can watch it on ESPNU. Can't wait. I mean, you got meaningful basketball in Memorial, like you said, for the first time in 2 years. And I think this is a little bit even different, Joey, because you go back to 2007 since they started a season with a record like this, and they can keep it going and punch their ticket into the AP poll potentially. But stay tuned for our coverage tonight. I think we might have a full crowd, full Vandy 24/7 team in attendance potentially tonight. Should be fun, and keep up with our coverage. We'll have post-game thoughts. I think we're going to try to find a way to go live tonight, because I think the lives are good, but either way, we'll have post-game thoughts, and Joey will have a couple stories out of the game tonight. But Joey, I'll see you tonight, and be careful getting over there.
Billy, you'll be able to find me around the court before the game if Jason Edwards is a game time decision. You can guarantee that. We'll be on the prowl. We'll be on the hunt. Me and Bigsby will be circling that court, making sure we don't miss anything.
Game starts at 8. They'll be there at 6:30 on the dot on the floor at Memorial Gym reporting.
We'll be banging down the door from the Kensington parking garage, Billy. That they might have to add a layer of security to that door to make sure me and Bigsby don't find a way.
Do you have a tent set up? I think that might be the move here to report tonight.
Billy, I don't think I can handle the temperatures for that long. Otherwise, maybe I'll stock the players' entrance. We'll see if there's a limp. It'll be a Lawrence boot situation.
Oh my gosh, that was awesome.
That was
Joey.
A day.
That was a day. I'll see you tonight.
We'll see you tonight, Billy.
All right, that's Joey Dwyer from right here at Vandy 24/7 Sports, previewing tonight's matchup against Mississippi State. Meaningful game at Memorial Gym. Looking forward to it. 8 o'clock tip-off on ESPNU. Stay tuned for our coverage tonight. And stay tuned for tomorrow's show. I think we'll do the roundtable with Chris and Luke, and we'll talk a lot of football and recap tonight's Mississippi State basketball game. For Joey Dwyer, for Kevin Ingram, and myself, Billy Derrick, thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Vandy 24/7 Live. This podcast has always been free. We plan for it to always be free. We want you to help keep it that way. Give the podcast a review and a 5-star rating. That helps us get noticed. If you're listening and if you haven't subscribed to Vandy 24/7 yet, please do. Special 75% off offer, $26 a year for this year. Go ahead and book it. That's an easy money deal. Subscribe to our Vandy 24/7 YouTube channel. That is free. Like this video, comment, subscribe to the channel. You'll get live updates every time we go live here Monday through Thursday. And finally, if you're interested in sponsoring this show specifically, anything we do right here at Vandy 24/7, email Chris Lee at chrislee70@gmail.com. And for that matter, email myself at billyderrick10@gmail.com as well. We want you a part of this because it's the best time of year to be covering Vanderbilt and to be supporting Vanderbilt. Thanks for listening and watching. And again, we'll catch you soon with more episodes of Vandy 24/7 Live.